Good evening, community, and welcome back to another Live Black Experience community dialogue. We are excited to have a larger panel this evening to talk us through the 2024 election, both presidential and other elections that have happened throughout this nation. We will be celebrating some things. We will be talking our way through the various emotions that people are feeling right now, navigating with transparency and vulnerability and just the collective feelings that we're all bringing to this conversation. This is obviously a challenging time for many of us in our community, but we are, if nothing else, a people that are very much rooted in a place of hope, in a place of faith and believing, and in a place of endurance and knowing that these are not grounds that are unfamiliar. These are roads that we have walked thousands of times before and survived and endured and thrived through them. And so, even though we know that many people are coming from different places of emotions right now, and I am certainly one of those who has been grappling with much of that, but we always come with that enduring sense of hope that we can bring to these conversations. So, before we get started, I'd like to just take us around. We'll consider this kind of our table for the evening, and I'll call on each of you to just do a quick introduction of yourself for our audience, and then we'll get started with some opening conversation and questions. So I will start directly to my right now at the table is Dr. Martin Tease.
Hey, good evening, actually, everyone. Dr. Martin Tease, he, him, and his pronouns. I work with Northern Arizona University in our multicultural student affairs, coordinating our LGBTQI plus student services, and also working with our Men of Color initiative at NAU.
Thank you. And next to him at the table is Reverend Jeff Kennedy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Kennedy, Pastor Kennedy. I'm the senior pastor at First Missionary Baptist Church in Flagstaff. I host a daily radio show in the news talk format, which you can imagine has been um, exciting and challenging, over the last few months, and no less so in the last couple of days. I also am a facilitator for Lancaster leadership and operating everything from DEI to strategic planning and team building. So I am happy and honored to be here and to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Ruff.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm Michael Ruff. I'm actually a former political director of the Arizona Democratic Party. I currently work for the largest Black-run civic engagement organization in the state of Arizona. It's called Our Voice, Our Vote, also the Arizona Coalition for Change. My role is Director of Rural Engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ann Hart.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Ms. House. Good to see you again. I am a retired Deputy Associate Superintendent for the Arizona Department of Education, and I'm now a professional development staff consultant, and I work underground with strategic community political activities and help to get candidates identified and vetted for political offices, and a parent and a grandparent.
Thank you for joining us again, Dr. Hart.
Thank you.
Miss Carolynn Kidd, or should I say Miss School Board Member Carolynn Kidd. And I know that she is currently on the road and making her way home. So we'll circle back to her actually to give her more time. So let's move to Dr. Ramona Curtis.
Good evening. My name is Ramona Curtis, and I am the Director for Workforce Programming at Tulsa Community College. I'm also a DEI consultant, and I have worked in various positions at Baylor University, where I retired in 2019 and moved to Tulsa to be closer to my family. And I'm just very happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us again. And Dr. Mary Roaf.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be back with the LBE family. My name is Dr. Mary Roaf. I am an associate professor and department chair of ethnic studies at California State University, Stanislaus in the Central Valley in California, which is quite red. And I actually started my journey into higher education as a faculty member at NAU after completing my master's degree there. So happy to join you all.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And let's start with, I know we have a lot of different things to talk about this evening and to kind of navigate in terms of how we're feeling after the presidential election in particular. But I like to start with a place of hope and joy and celebration. So let's turn to Dr. Curtis, who I know has a particularly meaningful celebration that can be shared with us this evening. Dr. Curtis, please open us up with what you are celebrating at this moment.
Well, I'm really celebrating in this red state, and I mean blood red state of Oklahoma, the election of my son, Monroe Nichols. He's mayor-elect for Tulsa, Oklahoma. And anyone that knows about Tulsa, Oklahoma, 103 years ago was one of the worst massacres in United States history. And to have an African-American mayor who no one thought was going to win, they thought his opponent was going to win, but the way he carried his campaign, I think that's what got us over. And there were so many young people that helped on that campaign. And I'm just happy to see that he has made history. Tulsans were happy. It was a great night despite how the elections went. And it's just a joyous time. So it's a bittersweet. It's light and darkness. It's we had a lot of ambiguity because we had such a wonderful historic a thing happen in our city, and it took people from all walks of life, because African Americans are about 16% of Tulsa's population. So it was a wonderful, wonderful night for Tulsa, the city of Tulsa. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and his election certainly made, I heard about it that same evening. It was national news. And you kind of started to touch on part of what makes his elections so significant. I'd like to keep us there for a moment to just have you talk about why it's so significant to have him as a Black man elected as the mayor of Tulsa. Take us a little bit into that history. And also, I'd love to hear from you, because you mentioned it, the significance of how he ran his campaign and just the focus there. And I think we are certainly in a period after the election of starting to digest and starting to really evaluate the different campaigns that happened. If you could just kind of walk us through his experience with that and share, as well as your own, in terms of supporting him through that campaign. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, it was tough. And as a mother of a candidate, I can tell you right now, it got really ugly at some point with his opponent. Got pretty racial. But I will say this, in 1921, 103 years ago, we had, prior to May through June 1 of 1921, we had a community of entrepreneurs. We had a community of innovators. We had an African American community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was economically prosperous. And if you know that story, there was a woman who said an African American man tried to rape her. And the African American community came out to defend him as he was in jail. And a shot was fired and everybody ran. And I'm telling the story a little fast here. But when the African American community went back to their community, Klansmen were deputized as sheriffs.
Right.
And they the Klan was Klansmen, and everyone were white supremacists got together. They burned that side, North Tulsa, down. They burned Greenwood down. And I know I told that quick because I want us to get to some of the other pieces to this election, but the significance of this is that story was not told to many generations after that. 10, 20, 30, 40. So you can ask people who are from Tulsa about the race massacre, and they're hearing about it for the first time. Because the African American community was afraid that there would be another uprising. And I think I would like to believe that there was some white guilt and shame as to why we're not going to talk about it, and why we're not going to talk about it. And they want to erase the history of that. And so due to that, generations didn't know about it. And then we learned about it. And so there was a call for reparations. There was a call for looking at North Tulsa, economically developing North Tulsa, giving people their land back, and giving those individuals who were displaced, those survivors, those descendants, their due. And so it resurfaced again. And that conversation has gone on for some 20 years now. And so there was always a division. And so when my son became the candidate, I think some people were afraid that, oh, he's just the Black candidate. He is the candidate that's just going to talk about reparations. When even though he had a plan laid out on his website, you see the surface stuff. And even when that came about, what do we then go back to? The horrific piece to that town and said, we're not healed yet. We haven't moved past that yet. But I will say the way he ran his campaign and what got him over was that he refused to talk negatively about his opponent. His goal was to talk about what he was going to do and not about who can't do it or who won't do it or whatever their agenda is. He stayed on point to his agenda, but his agenda was written based on talking to every segment of Tulsa community, economic, racial, generation, any segment of society, from homeless population, many conversations with the homeless, many conversations with those who work with the homeless, conversations with maybe some African Americans who might not have trusted his leadership. It's not time. You're too young. It's not time. Even, and I will say this, and I can say this because I've raised this point in his election to one of the reporters who was African American, that asked him a question that they didn't ask his white female opponent. And it was about, and I know he was asked that question only because he was African American. And I almost as though he wasn't Black enough to be mayor. Our people asked him a question about reparations and didn't ask the white woman that question. And this is an African American male, elder male. And I don't mind saying that. I really don't mind saying that. But those are the things that my son had to overcome in this election. And he just did it, thick-skinned and did it. But his mother wasn't happy about it because I understand that whole inability to be at peace with your own racial identity as you're trying to move forward as a leader. So Am I black enough, or am I too black, or am I what is it? And that's something that we understand it. And that's what made this so significant to me, that thank God I knew what was happening in that moment, that happened to him at a debate. I knew what was happening in that moment. And I said, my goodness, we have not gotten past that. We have not gotten past that. An elder, whether you support him or not. And I didn't mind the question. You just didn't ask it to both candidates. And that sent the message to the crowd that, is he black enough to be mayor and have your interest in mind? So to me, his winning just disproved that it should not matter. But we know that it's there, but it should not matter if we're talking about moving people forward. If we're talking about moving communities forward, if we're talking about uniting our community, if we're talking about no matter what walk of life, because I truly believe that you should not have to change your zip code for a good quality of life. And so I think it meant so much to me because I'm a baby boomer, and I've seen and I've been around. And so that was the inside of a political campaign was hard for me. I've never been that close to a political campaign to have to hold my breath so much, because I am not the quiet spirit that my son is when it comes to issues of race.
We appreciate you holding him down and supporting him through that. And I'm going to jump to our panelist who just joined us, Carolynn Kidd. We love to offer you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And then I do have a question for you that I'll come back with as soon as you are done with your introduction. So please.
Thank you so much. And first, let me apologize for the internet going back and forth. I was having my husband driving me home, and I just wanted to be on time. But a little patience goes a long way. So thank you everyone for having me here today. As you know, my name is Carolynn Kidd, and I just won one of the seats for Flagstaff Unified School District. I happen to be the only person of color on that board. And so I know the weight of all Black and brown and immigrants and women and everything is on my shoulders. But you know what? I'm ready for it. I have really broad shoulders. I have 25 years plus experience in HR, also in change management. And I'm working with Coconino County right now, where I worked in HR, and then I moved over to work with adult probation because I feel that adult probation did not have enough persons as officers looking like me. However, the clients and the probationers were looking like me. So I figure out that, we need somebody to represent and bring the lived experience to them. You hear a little accent here. I am from Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island, Caribbean island, really close to Venezuela. So we live diversity there. It's not a choice. It happens, right? All different types of diversities came to being in Trinidad and Tobago. So in moving here to the United States, I think there's a lot of awareness and education that needs to be done. And there's some forces who don't want us to do that. Well, you know what? You can't stop it. It's going to happen, right? So I'm happy to be here. Use me anyway. I'm an advocate for advocates. I'm an ally for allies. And I'm here.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I also just want to call out the fact that you have been an active and vocal member of the community for diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging and justice and all of those things, including serving on and as the chair of the city's Commission on Diversity Awareness. And so the question that I wanted to bring for you in particular was not only what made you run for the school board, but also what makes you so passionate as a public figure in a number of different ways for these things and for diversity and for representing the people that look like you who are not often seen in those public spaces.
That is a really good question. Thank you so much for asking. I remember my father saying to me, don't wait for somebody to do it. If you can, you do it. When I moved from Orlando, Florida, I lived there for 18 years, taking care of my deceased dad now. I moved here 6 years ago to Flagstaff. Honestly, I could not find people looking like me. And I asked someone, I did see one person, and I asked, plain back, where are all the Black people? And he said, I don't know. Where are they? I said, well, it doesn't seem like it. He said, they're around. I said, okay. Then I started working with Coconino County in HR. So I know most of the employees, we hire them and they're there. We have 1,200 employees and I still couldn't find anyone. Well, eventually I did find 5 ink spots. So I call myself an ink spot because there's a big white page and there's an ink spot. And it's just something that I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's just something that I laugh at because I like to laugh at myself, right? And like to laugh at situations because that's how I get through it, right? So I was one of the 5 ink spots. And I recognized what was happening. It was systemic racism in the county, in the state, I guess in the United States of America, because I also lived in Florida for 18 years. And I decide to be the one who will advocate and do something. And I want to speak for the persons who feel that they don't have any voices. And because I'm the one in the room speaking, I tend to be added to boards or asked to be on boards and all of that. And when I get on those different organizations, I find like nobody else is there. Or then when I saw Khara one day, I was like, wow, yes. And I start seeing others. But I feel that it's not enough of us on there speaking on certain things, right? So I feel if I'm the first one to be on that board, I'm not sure if I'm the first one, but right now I'm the only Black person on that board, then it will inspire others to do so. It will inspire others to say, hey, it's okay for me to do that. It's okay for me to speak out, right? Now, one of the things I tell people, I don't know if it's something good or it's something bad, but so far I think it works for me. I said, I am a daughter from a different country, right? I'm saying this nice now, but I usually say, listen, I am not from here. So let me tell you how it happens in our country, because diversity, we don't even call it something. It just happens because there are different blood streaming through my veins, right? My maiden name was Campbell. Campbell ain't Black, right? So understand what's happening with that history. I learned to embrace it and let it move and let it push me forward. And this is the message I want to say today, is that I take lemon and I make lemonade. There's no way. Things happen, things pass, and my faith is strong. And I believe that whatever happened a couple of days ago, that is just giving us an eye opener to be strong and to fight harder. So that's my message. And, that is what that's what I wanted to do, to run for the school board. I feel that I can help out Black and Brown cultures, because we do have a lot of people in leadership and are teachers and in very specific, important positions who do not know the lived experience of Black and Brown people. And if I can help and I can serve and I can educate and still smile, although I'm grinding inside, I think God has me at this moment and this time to do something more. And that's it.
Thank you so much. And that's certainly not it. That is the beginning of all the work that you're going to be doing, because it's so important. And we thank you for taking that on. I'd like to come now to Dr. Hart and Mr. Ruff, who I still remember one of the first times I met Mr. Ruff. He said, just call me Michael. And I said no, because I have to feel my ancestors and my dad in particular watching in the distance, and know that would not fly. But I'd like to come to the two of you and just ask for your perspective on the broader election landscape and what happened in terms of not only the presidential landscape, or presidential election, but also we saw that the House and the Senate are likely to flip. We're seeing a rise in that movement towards more conservative Republican Party. And I think there are a lot in the nation who did not necessarily see it coming, but there were many among us who probably did. And I just love to hear your thoughts on what happened with this election. So we can start with you, Dr. Hart, and then we'll come to you, Brother Ruff.
Thank you. Regarding this election, there was a landscape of multiple threads. It started out with hope, with our president who was already in place. And it took a landslide with different things that occurred. And we all know what happened with that regard. But I think what I saw as the landscape is what I think about as our people. Were we prepared to really ignite what needed to be done to really light the torch for change, a positive change and victory in terms of the areas that we needed to have met in terms of resources and education and healthcare and housing, environment and global warming, and all those other specific things that directly affect our families. And I don't think that the work was really put in primarily to have initiated a solid foundation to have all those areas recognized and covered. Our ground game was not as efficient as it was when Obama was running, and that was a different process that was used to utilize the Gen Xers, the millennials, and college students, and all other persons across the board in a very strategic manner. My daughter was just graduating from Spelman College at the time, and she asked me 5 times, because she relocated to different cities where Obama had his groundwork going: Boston, North Carolina, Hampton, Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia. And I was like, well, what are you going to do? Where are you going to live? But he had a plan, and he had these Gen Xers and these college students, these millennials, very excited about that. And that was a solid foundation for that what the seeds were planted to begin with. But we were kind of out there in the middle of the sea, in my opinion, on a ship, and the iceberg was ahead of us unknowingly. And we sat on that ship and we just floated along thinking that it was going to be status quo. We were hopeful that normally presidents have re-elections most times, and that Democrats were very successful. The whole landscape of what possibly could occur, I don't think it was our ground people, our leaders in the DNC, our precincts. And this is one thing that strategically I advocate for, but I don't know when and how and what it takes to get us all united, because we weren't under one tent. We had different ideas. We had a different movement. There was infighting among African Americans and all other people that didn't look like us. And even within our own tribe of African Americans, we had not so pleasant thoughts about who we were and what role we played. We have to stop looking at things as power plays, and somebody has to be, um, the leader, and someone has to be the helpers. And those were things that I was really disenchanted about. So, moving forward, we all know what happened to Biden. On comes Kamala. It was awesome that she could raise $1 billion and get everybody on board as quick as she did in about a week. And that gave a false sense of security for all of us. Black men were on board, black women, white women, and all other populations. And they came out in high percentages. It was very happy, as Michelle Obama said. It was a happy time. Hope has a comeback. But I don't think that we spent enough time thinking about what was going on the other end. We look at the convict as somebody who was too much of a lunatic to cross the line, because he was a lunatic. And we feel like the educated black woman who was going to pull us across the finish line. She's a prosecutor, she's an attorney. However, when you're looking at billionaire friends of the convict, and the possibility of an ex-prosecutor and attorney getting in the attorney general, getting to the position where she can halt the progress and mess with the money and the business sectors and everything that was going on. This man was surrounded with billions of dollars and millionaires, and when anybody to tap into any of those resources. We didn't check the box on how that looked. We saw Kamala as the person who was going to give us freedom and pull us through the finish line, because she had all the checks in the box. She was intelligent. She had the credentials. She had the experience. She had the background. Very articulate. She didn't come off like the angry black woman. The whole nine. I don't have to take you all through that. But we weren't looking at the business part of it, the real politics behind how white businessmen operate and the hold that they wanted to have over that. And I still don't think that this is going to be something that we're going to see 4 years later with him maintaining his space and place in the White House. I believe that's going to falter. But there were some things that were neglected from the Democratic Party that I'm sad to say, with the Flint situation with the water in Mississippi and Michigan, and putting the money in Ukraine and leaving us neglected, so those are trials and tribulations that made me gleeful at times and made me hopeful. But when I think about it in the larger scheme of things, there were a lot of missteps. And it saddens me. It saddens me for the population of women who didn't support this stretch of hope, where we could have had more of an opportunity to have our health care. And we don't want to be in a situation where everything is threatened, but we just have to start and recognize who we are and embrace one another and be honest. And that has to begin with just trying to be common folk and getting to know each other. And with this yard stream that we're having right now, I look at all of us here in this gallery. We don't know one another that well, but I think that this is something that we should start. If we'll do this on a continual basis, let's have an opportunity to meet in person, because we have a lot of resources here and we can build from them. We have Dr. Curtis, whose son is now the mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I go to Oklahoma. I want to be able to look up Dr. Curtis and help her son, just because the gallery is a distant opportunity. I want us to make us cross the finish line, so when we revisit this in 4 years, we can reach back and stretch arms. That's the small summary for what I have to say. And congratulations to you, my Caribbean sister, Miss Kidd, because my family is from Barbados, and I was seriously thinking about relocating in a few weeks. Packing up my sarong and learning how to mix drinks on the beach, because I'm not sure how long I can be able to deal with what's to come. So my Caribbean, Tobago, Trinidad sister, I definitely want to get to know you. But I say these things with a lace of humor, because I want to get to know all of you in more of a close and personal manner. And I can't thank Ms. Coral for bringing us together, and Ms. House, because we've worked together and I've seen a lot of you on this gallery before. I want this to be more of an intimate situation moving forward, to get to know you all in a conversation, break bread, spend a night, and wake up together and know that we have resources that are connected beyond this gallery.
Thank you so much. And let's go to Brother Ruff, and then we will move to allow Dr. Ricardo Guthrie, who has joined us, to introduce himself. And then I actually want to circle back on that comment from Dr. Hart on that connection and building that coalition building, to just go around the table again and just hear where people are at, how you're feeling, and those sorts of things. But let's start with Brother Ruff.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I think Dr. Hart did an excellent job of sort of chronicalizing and summarizing what was at play in this election. And how it happened. For me, I ran my first campaign in 2004. And so my experience comes from that lens of running campaigns. I've worked for the Ohio Democratic Party. I've worked for the Arizona Democratic Party. I happen to, have a great deal of experience in campaigns in battleground states. So I can appreciate your summary, Dr. Hart.
Thank you.
From my lens, the Democratic Party is going to have to do some soul searching. To no fault of Vice President Harris, there's a disconnect. From my experience, when you lose a campaign, it's tough. But how you lose matters. If the margins are close, you scratch your head, you beat yourself up, and you say, maybe I should have targeted this demographic, this community. Maybe my message should have said that. Maybe I should have went to one more event. But when the margins are like they were the other day, that signals dramatic change needs to happen in terms of messaging and everything else you can think of when it comes to the Democratic Party. I believe that our party has lost touch with common folk. And I think, we counted on emotions to get us through in terms of what kind of man he is, what kind of man he was. But, emotions can only get you so far. And in politics, from my experience, those who led with emotion typically lost. This is a very strategic game we're playing here. It's politics, it's power, it's money, everything Dr. Hart said. And, I happen to be on the ground in some rural parts of Arizona. And I, too, was guilty of sort of not really hearing what was being said to me from Black men, from Latino men, from women, from everybody. So I think that, the Democratic Party is in a tough position. There's not a lot of time. There's a lot of finger pointing. I would say from my experience, there's no one reason why we lost. But I do think that this is an indication of a huge disconnect. And you name it, from the 18 to 29-year-old generation, Hispanic voters, Black voters, you name it. I saw some stats this morning that blew me away when they say that he made history. He really did. He was the first Republican presidential candidate to ever, in 52 years, to gain that share of Hispanic votes. And he was the first Republican presidential candidate to get that many Black votes in 48 years. And he was the first Republican presidential candidate in 20 years, not the first, but in 20 years, to gain that large of a vote from the 18 to 29-year-old demographic. 20 years. And so therein lies a message. And I think it's time that the Democratic Party began to listen, begin to involve people, begin to communicate. It can't be top down. Who knows best? Who has the most experience? I think we're in a different time with social media. Young people, I'm learning that 18 to 29-year-old demographic aren't really sold on political parties.
Right.
And I think he exploited that. And we were looking at him as an idiot, as uncouth. But in hindsight, he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He saw a lot of weaknesses that the Democratic Party left there. And in the most uncouth way you can think of, he exploited it. And perhaps it worked. I don't particularly think it's doom and gloom. I've been getting a lot of phone calls. A lot of people are hurt. A lot of people are confused. A lot of people are like, where do we go next? And so I tell my friends, my family, we do what we always have done as Black folks. We're going to be okay. We're going to make it. But I do think there's an opportunity, and Dr. Hart touched on it, to build better community amongst Black folks. My experience as the political director for the Arizona Democratic Party was for the past 4 years. It was very interesting. But one of the things that was most challenging to do was to get people who look like me to support what I was doing. And so, therefore, I've been saying this lately. I always hear people talk about a seat at the table, but I learned firsthand, that seat at the table, if those around the table aren't like-minded, that seat holds a little less value.
Right.
But if the people that look like you don't support you, that seat is it's even less valuable. And so, that being said, there's a lot of work to do. Nationally, locally, statewide here in Arizona. But I think it can be done. But the question is the Democratic Party ready and willing to spend the resources in this political industry to include people that look like us so they can learn more about how we feel and why we vote the way we do?
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Guthrie, we want to come to you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And then I'm going to take us over to Dr. Roaf to start us off on that conversation on just how we're feeling after the election and where each of you thinks that we are kind of going from here.
Okay, thank you. I'll just do the introduction. Ricardo Guthrie. I used to work at the Northern Arizona University on the mountain, leading ethnic studies for about 14 years. And now I'm at Fisk University at the John Lewis Center for Social Justice, running the graduate program, Masters in Social Justice, whatever that means. I was previously a legislative aide and staff director for State Representative Sandra Graham in Boston, Massachusetts during the Dukakis era. And so I saw what happens when Democratic parties try to align themselves for the good of a population that is incredibly diverse and has conflicting interests. But because we're in Massachusetts, just like some folks are in California, there's an illusion that everybody's on the same page because they're Democrats, or they're against you because they're Republicans. And the reality was far more different than that. And so as a committee member, staff director for a progressive under Dukakis, we had a delusion that Dukakis could win because he was winning in Massachusetts. And I kind of think that's sort of what the Democrats did with Kamala, pushing her forward, saying, you're ready. We're ready.
Exactly.
Go out there and take the bullets for us. Go out there and show them they're better angels.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That's the hope that Dr. Hart was talking about. We got to have that. But it's not just a reality if that hope isn't acted on. So that's my introduction, Ms. Khara. It is based on working in the trenches, as Michael Ruff said. You got to have that. You can't just sit in the armchair and say, I read a book And this is what it's about. You got to be out there and talk to people, and you say, you know what we tried to do didn't quite work. Can you tell us what you think? And that's pretty much what I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mary, please tell us where you're at right now. What are your first thoughts on how you're feeling and where we kind of go from here?
So I'm going to give a different perspective, and I'm going to frame it with the timeline starting at 1492. I'm also going to add, we need to contextualize this in a larger geopolitical global context. The entire world is choosing fascism. It's not just the US. And I've been seeing this coming down the pipe for a long time, because there's a lot of elephants in the room that I think, this is a tapestry, this is a mosaic. I refuse to give Donald Trump any credit that I do not believe he deserves. His campaign was a disaster. He was falling apart. He is in visible cognitive and probably physical decline. I hope he lives, because I don't want to see J.D. Vance in office. Speaking of social media, everyone went into this individually and collectively with eyes wide open and with first-hand lived experience. My sister, who is the first woman of color bishop elected in the Episcopalian Diocese of West Tennessee, sent me a video of Donald Trump giving fake fellatio to a microphone. Mm-hmm. What is on the ballot all over the world? It's not Democrat. It's not Republican. It's this entire structure that, in my opinion, of colonization, I've been saying this for years, and we're about to experience the full brunt of the reality of this world order that has been put in place, that, in my opinion, as not only an historian, as not only an interdisciplinary ethnic studies scholar, Black studies scholar, and activist, is not only as an anthropologist who has studied societies and the evolution of modern humans, but as a spiritual being. This settler colonialist, genocidal, maniacal, diabolical system is the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. It is not sustainable. And what we are approaching is the end of this world order as we know it all over the world. And as an historian who studied this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about not intellectualism, but each individual member in each community had eyes wide open, and they have an unprecedented opportunity to reclaim their power. Each and every one of us looking in the mirror, using these technological tools at our disposal. Every great empire falls from within. Those of us on the margins can't topple these empires. So thank you, everyone around the world, for doing the legwork, right, of dismantling this whole system, right, is about to go down. I never thought that I would be living through one of those watershed, pivotal moments in history that I learn about and that I teach about. That's first. Second of all, everyone saw the videos. Project 2025 was leaked, y'all. It was leaked months in advance. I have faith and I have gnosis. And if you don't recognize and understand what's going on at a deep, really critical, really fundamental and spiritual level, my parents have had me in politics since I was 9 years old, right? Get it. We gotta take out that vision a little bit more. the time of paternalism and, oh my God, we need to do so much more. Now I'm always in community. I'm always cultivating community. I just did a post-election reflection session at my campus with students and community members. And I said, reclaim your power. Anybody can pull up the abridged version of Project 2025. Read it for yourself. These people are showing us and telling us exactly who they are. And we lived through it for 4 years. So you can say whatever you want to say. This economy and the inflation was worldwide because of COVID-19, because of Trump's policies. We all lived through that. We all saw what he did. I am not going to join the chorus of the emperor wears no clothes. Absolutely not. And I am so glad. I have been waiting for this other shoe to drop for so long. We are entering a new era where none of the status quo is going to work, where we understand that this diabolical system is in its end days, and that is, as it is what I believe, use alchemy. That's how we turn lemons into lemonade. I looked at everyone. I said, all this pointing of fingers, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. I'm getting all of my ducks in order. There are amazing things happening on the community level, and I'm spreading this message. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have every right to make your choice. And also, this age of truly reclaiming power means exercising choice and self-accountability and knowing that the consequences that are coming, you chose that. Everyone had eyes wide open. That's what time it is. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I will share any resources so that you can read on your own. I will share with you things that I have always been doing in community and with community, and we are amping them up. And when I tell you opportunities and abundance is flowing, it is flowing because I do believe in a higher power. There are those of us on the side who are going to help us go through the death, birth, rebirth, resurrection cycle. Does the Democratic Party fundamentally need to change it? All this is about to go, though, right? It's going to have to really, really, really transform. It cannot be business as usual. It cannot be. And the last thing I want to say and why I'm so hopeful is because no one really, I mean, you can keep pointing the finger. I'm not wasting my energy and time doing that. But ultimately, when everything starts coming down the pipe, no one has anyone to blame. You can't blame anyone. You can't blame not knowing because things were leaked. Things are all out there at everyone's disposal. The people who were the flawed architects of this experiment, of this republic, knew and understood that we cannot have a republic, much less a representative democracy, unless we had individual citizens who were engaged, who did not sit back on their butts and treat this like it's a spectator sport. This is everybody's work to do. And I'm not going to sit here. That man was crumbling and falling apart. People voted for the status quo. People voted for white supremacy. People voted for misogyny. People voted to be agents of chaos or agents of the light. That's what was on the ballot. And the last thing I told my community yesterday, engaged in a conversation with a young woman who stepped with honor and respect, had open questions, honest questions, who voted for Trump. We engaged in a real exchange. And the one thing that I know that is the ultimate lesson, we have got to tell the truth. Deep, deep, deep truth. I told this young woman the truth with respect, with honor, and I looked at her and I said, "We need you." She said, "I didn't know. I've been talking. I'm in relationship with Black men and Latinx men." And then I said, "Oh, and what did they?" She's like, "Oh, I didn't even know to respond that way." I'm like, "It's okay." She's like, and I looked at her and I said, I'm 56 years old. I'm at a different phase. I have a different purpose. I feel very galvanized. I feel very purpose-filled and purpose-driven because I know why I'm here and what I am here to do, channeling all of my ancestors. And I looked at her and I said, You have a relationship with these young men that I don't have. I can't. You are a bridge, and we need you. And she started crying. And the last thing I told everyone with all this, well, we should have done this and we should have done. Nope, baby. Everybody, look in the mirror. This paternalism has to end. We need to help and support each other, activating our full power, our full autonomy. And we're not going to do it by the same old, same old. So what I said, you don't need a degree to have humanity. You don't need a PhD to have heart. You saw during those first 4 years, innocent babies being ripped from their families, being put in concentration camps, being raped and human trafficked by the guards in those camps. So what they have showed us, and they told us what they're going to do, they're going to do it, and we are all responsible. And it's time for real transformation, and it's time for radical truth, and it's time to see faith with works that we have not seen in probably thousands of years. I'm here for it, and I'm ready for it. And I'm going to just say this, Black people, I understand everybody. I love that we're all going inward. We can't save anybody. We can offer the choice. We can offer the choice, and everybody has a right to their choice. We are done trying to hold up this whole thing, none of the transformation is going to happen unless each individual and each collective goes through this death and rebirth. And that's why it's time to fall back and, in certain respect, let them feel the full brunt of the consequences of their choices so that they can choose whether or not to activate their power and to bring about real transformation, because this system is going down either way.
Thank you so much for all of that, Dr. Roaf. That was very powerful. And it, as you were speaking, I was reminded of I sent a message to Dr. Coral just a little bit before we started, saying we had talked about possibly even moving this session because I had reached a point where my thing was, I think I reached my limit today on some of the hopefulness and some of the, just let's carry forward, let's keep moving, let's just keep going forward, and had some conversations early in the day that just kind of, I realized, nope, I have reached my limit of that direction, and I need to pause and maybe pull back a little bit. And she sent a video that really kind of got me ready for this session of a young Black woman who does parking lot conversations, and her sharing, we are not in this to save everyone, but we are also not able to just withdraw and not be part of this fight and not keep going. And so very grateful for what you just shared. I'd like to turn to Reverend Kennedy and just ask you for your perspective in this. We had some good conversation on Tuesday evening leading up to the election, and you got to ask some questions of folks about which way they thought things were going and why we were coming into the conversation in different ways and how people should approach it. And right before election night, I also participated in an online conversation with another local pastor, Pastor Charlie McCallie. I always think I'm going to get his last name wrong, but he was opening up the floor for people to have good conversation and just talk about where we go, particularly from a place of faith, moving forward, regardless of what happens in the election. So I'd love to hear from you just kind of where you're at and how you're seeing some of the direction forward after the election, and where you just see this whole conversation going?
Well, thank you for that. And I want to start by letting each and everyone know how much I admire your position and your perspective on this and sharing um, these insights because I think they're important. And so I kind of want to start at the end, Dr. Ruff, of where you said, because I also believe that we're in this space together, in this time, in this space for such a time as this. And um, we can allow our disappointment to cause paralysis, or we can cause it to uh, galvanize out through our faith and come up with more strategic ways to circumvent this world order that you talked about that we see in place now. And so I think it's important that we understand a few things. And um, you ask from this position of faith. Well, number one, on November 4th, God was in control, and he was in control on November 5th, and he's still in control here on November 8th. And that has never really changed. But here's what I think we underestimated. And we talked about strategically. Dr. Ruff, you talked about where we missed the mark strategically, um, and I agree with that. I think we underestimated the power of fear and what fear did in this campaign. If you look at any time that you convince people that another group of people are going to take their stuff, okay, all of a sudden their privilege is at risk. Well, it's always been this way. We have always had the benefit of this privilege because as we control the money, we control the jobs, we control this, we control that. And so now you say, immigrants are taking your jobs. They're raping your little girls. They're doing these, and so we continue to play on this aspect of fear. You can't buy groceries, and if we continue down this path, you're not going to be able to eat. There aren't good jobs available for you anymore because these people are taking those jobs, and you continue to promote that message of fear. If you don't align with this ideology, you are going to lose your stuff. You are not going to be able to maintain the right of privilege that you have the power. I think we underestimated that, and we allowed fear to blur our focus, and it blurred everybody's focus, and the smoke screen worked. I know you said you didn't want to give credit where there wasn't credit due, but here's the thing that we maybe underestimated. There was a level of brilliance within all of that negative conversation, with the uncouth manner in the way that he speaks. You're speaking to largely uneducated, at least in some form, uneducated, poor people who have always been afraid, and they have depended on some type of system
Right.
that allowed them to have an advantage. And he brought that back, and he brought it
Mhm.
back with billions of dollars from his millionaire friends who
Mhm.
understood the audience that they were, and they poured those messages in. And listen, I worked in sports at the professional level for 20 years, and the messaging, the message boards, the amount of people that are in stadiums, and the millions of people that are watching the NFL on Sunday, and everything else that we hold dear and important because it's so American and it's the fight. Let's get those messages out, and let's outspend. Let's continue to just flood people with this idea that if you don't align with us, you're going to lose what you've always held precious. All right. So that's fear. Now, within our religious community, we know that the only way to effectively fight fear is through faith. But here's what happens. If you look at the ladder of accountability, where hope is also weight. There's weight and hope. And unfortunately, sometimes when we are operating in faith, we allow our hope to cause that keeps us from being activists, keeps us from being strategic, keeps us from the tactical maneuvers that are required when you realize that some of your pre-planning, some of your strategy is no longer working. How are we going to shift? What are we going to do in the fight? Because it's really easy to say what you should do until you start getting hit. And when you start getting hit, then you have to adjust. We didn't adjust. We kept with the same playbook and never really changed it, thinking that hope was going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, hope wasn't enough.
Right.
As a matter of fact, faith, as powerful as it is, if faith doesn't have something to attach itself to, then it's no longer active faith, right? It's just, I'll wait and see. And so what we have to understand as people of faith is that that doesn't ever mean that we are supposed to sit on our hands and wait for somebody to do something for us. We have to get out and make sure that we're getting the right message to the right people. So what would have happened? Well, and you talked about the meltdown from that candidate. We saw it happening before our very eyes, but we never took advantage of it. We never looked and said, is this really, we talked about, is this the type of leader that you want? Well, yeah, it's proven by the popular vote that it's exactly the type of leader that a lot of people thought, because that dialogue became the hope of people who are scared, So you ask me how I feel at the end of it, because I know that we're in this place for such a time as this. I remain actively hopeful and full of faith because, like you said, and I love the way you framed it, and I've been telling people this, isn't it going to be interesting when the truth is revealed, when the mask comes off, and even the evangelicals who supported this moment, that supported this, all of a sudden they realize that you were duped. And and now you're getting what you asked for. But that's okay, because from a prophetic standpoint, we then get to get back in the faith and begin to uncover the things that actually work, which goes back to God being in control. So I asked a group of pastors one day, and I want to share this with you. And Councilmember House, we might have had this conversation in part. I became really disturbed that my conservative friends who are pastors and with influence and influencing their members, their congregations to vote red, and then my pastor friends who are not as conservative, encouraging their congregations to vote blue. I started asking some hard questions from both sides, and the most difficult question that I ask, and the most common question, what gives you the right to believe and promote that you're more enlightened than someone on the other side? And someone said to me, well, most Democrats aren't Christian. I said, really? I said, I would love for you to take a trip with me down to, I don't know, First Institutional Baptist Church in Phoenix, and tell those couple thousand African American Democrats that they're not Christian. Would you take that ride with me? Saying, no, Pastor, I'm not doing that. Well, why not? You just said that there's no way that you could be Democrat and be Christian at the same time, and I know that you believe that. So why wouldn't you take that ride? Why wouldn't you walk in and tell that congregation that your political alignment somehow has voided your entrance into Christianity and has made your belief invalid? Folks. And so I wanted to get this dialogue in the room. I wanted to get, pastors from Trump and pastors from Harris in the same room together, and let's have a conversation about why we think the way we think and why we've come to this place where we're so right and the other side is so wrong. And what it was going to come down to are the things that were important, the things that matter on the ground to people in the community. And we see this division. And so, unfortunately, this looks so black and white to us, right? This looks like a racial line that has happened that's going to further divide us. And if we're not careful, it's going to. But to your point, it's so much deeper than that. It's so much more diabolical than that, so much more sinister to that, that we have to be, we have to increase our awareness, and we have to understand that, you know what, whether or not you're a pastor for Trump or whether or not you're a pastor for Harris, somehow there's something that we missed in there that is the collective of what we should be promoting as we promote that God is in control, that he hasn't lost control, and we're in this space together for something that is way bigger than our political politics and our party politics. So this is where, to answer your question, this is where I've landed. I believe that today, my job, our job, is to continue to be a conduit for God's love and God's purpose, to remind people that we don't have to be victims. Okay, that we read, we've read the end of the story, and we can come out of this ahead. However, we still have to travel through this difficult, dark place in order to get there. This didn't happen by accident. God didn't wake up today and say, "Whoa, didn't see this happen. Didn't see this coming." That's not everything that we're discussing today had to be discussed, has to be discussed. We have to be in this space together. And so whether or not it's a new strategic plan, whether or not it's a better ability to tactically adjust when things start going wrong or whatever, we have to make sure that the message is clear. Fear will never overwhelm faith. It can blur our faith, but it will never overwhelm our faith. And you know what? We still believe in the power of our faith. We believe that if enough of us are aligned to do the right thing and say the right thing and teach in the right way, that we can overcome this. And let me tell you one last thing, and I'll be quiet. As a people, what have we always done? We have always overcome, and we have overcome by our faith.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, thank you. I want to come to Dr. Tease and invite you to just share where you're feeling at this moment. And then I'm going to go to Dr. Allen, give you the chance to jump into the conversation, say welcome, and then I'll have a question that I'll start with Dr. Allen on as well. So Dr. Tease, please.
Cool. Thank you. One, congratulations to my family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I know we're related some kind of way, but we'll figure that out. To my sister Carolynn, kid, you better go, girl. Can't wait to see you on school board doing your thing. I will tell you, those are probably two of the things that make me happy and smile. I will tell you, it's been a range of emotions. For someone who loves watching politics and TV, I have not been able to turn on the television. I have not been able to listen to any punditry excuses. I didn't want to see her speech. Tim Wall said something. I don't want to see it. I'm not there right now, and I go up and down, and I listen to what people are saying, even on this. And as I pulled up the poll and the exit polls, if they're correct, I think, and when we talk about a truth and when we talk about a strategy, even faith, because I know I'm a God believing person, and faith is what I got to hold on to, and I know faith without works is whatever that's supposed to be. And I think listening to this conversation, I think we have to be honest and truthful. One, Black people showed up. They tried to say that we weren't. They tried to say whatever. And if I'm looking at these polls and they're correct, almost 90-something% of Black people voted for Kamala. That's almost double what everybody else did. The lowest population of people who voted for Trump was Black men. Everybody else is almost double that. So there is something that we know intrinsically, is that this is about race. This is about the fact that this was a female candidate. I mean, I thought Hillary was bad. I had the fortune of being in the UK when that happened. So when that blow hit, it was like, wow, That's a gut punch. I think this is a kick in the teeth, you know, and I don't have many to give away to folks, but I'm just like, I think the honest conversation, and I know we were talking about strategizing, we have done the work. We've overcome, we sing the songs. I'm mystified. I try to look at, and I understand the Democratic Party isn't perfect. I also think that, you know, the ways in which Kamala then became the point person for this, Vice President Harris, I think there's just a lot of issues that are there. But at the core and the base of them is racism, it's sexism, misogyny. I think when you're talking about fear, I'm like you, Dr. Ruff. I cannot give anybody intelligence and brilliance in the way that this campaign ran, because this man, over the course of the 4 years that he was the president, and then even in running this election, said immigrants eat dogs and cats, said he was going to do mass deportation, has celebrated Netanyahu and other members of the Gaza conflict, you know, terrorists, money, secrets, all this stuff. And this isn't stuff that we're making up. This is stuff that you can actually see him say. I wish all of us could go say, we're so mad that we're going to go stand out on the street in Flagstaff and start shooting folks, right? I'm really, want to say I'm ready to blow shit up, right? But I know that, like, I don't mean that, because first of all, my brother, Dr. Guthrie, is going to be like, you better be careful because you don't really mean that. Pastor Kennedy is going to be like, okay, calm yourself, right? There's going to be things that that I or we as people of color, even, whether black, brown, straight, gay, that there's things that we cannot do that they let that man get away with. And someone who's worked in media and looks at media as well, we have to talk about the unconventional way in which they covered the election and what they allowed him to get away with and what they held her accountable and responsible for. And I think my brother on CNN said that he's allowed to be lawless. She has to be flawless. Somebody else said that she's taken a completely different test than what he is and what he's being allowed to do. And so I guess just in my emotion and my passion and thinking about what's we gonna do, they got me going back to old slavery. What's we gonna do now? And I don't really know what that is. And as someone was asking me today, what did I think? I want to say we're going to be okay, but I don't feel that right now. I don't feel like we're going to be okay. I don't know what's going to happen. And the sad part of it is that truth that we're talking about just a reality ago is what's going to happen when that man sits in that seat and he's got all them people around him.
That part.
And the sad part of it is some of us ain't going to be the ones that it's going to impact first. But I know all those numbers of folks that look like us that did, they're going to be the first ones that everything's coming to. So when they call ICE on your ass, what are we doing? What you going to do? When you're losing your welfare, when you have reproductive rights issues, what you going to do? And are we supposed to be the ones to sit there and be like, oh, it's going to be okay? Or do we say, this is the boat and what you created and ride it out? So I just have all those emotions going on. And right now I like to believe that in my life that I've been structured enough to where I can look and say, it looks bad now, but we know that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. I just don't, first of all, I don't want to be on that tunnel because it takes it's 4 years away from now that we're going to have to look at all this mess. So I don't know. I don't have the positivity. My sister and I always talk about hope. I'm not hopeful. Hope is not in me right now, but my faith, I got to hold on to my faith. And although it's hard right now, but the hope, the okay, and all that stuff, I don't see, but I do take comfort in knowing that all was not a wash and that we do have access and attachments to folks whose races did come into fruition. We look at Hakeem Jeffries, we look at those who were elected at Maryland, I think in Virginia and some other state races. So, I'll take those blessings and hold on to something, and try to get from there. But for right now, I think that, us looking at that strategy, what's we gonna do, and do, Black folks and those folks who consistently vote for the majority of the Democrat Party, where do you go? What do you do? And how are those conversations happening? Because I do think, as some of you did say, we do have to have conversations with folks. But I want to go back to what Dr. Ruth said, which is there's truth, and I think, Dr. Guthrie, we always used to talk about it, but I think there's like that empirical and then evidence, and then, as it goes to truth and fact and all those things. So I just, right now, I love hearing what y'all have to say, but I'm wondering, where do we go? And how do we get through this mess that we're about to go potentially through?
Yes, we see it in the chat, and I think many of us, and if not all of us, agree that we appreciate that transparency, Dr. Tease. So thank you for that. Dr. Allen, welcome to the table. And we'd love to offer you an opportunity to just introduce yourself. And then the question that I'm going to ask of you in particular, and then I'll take it around to some others as well, is because we have had those conversations about revolutionary joy, and you have led some of our conversations on womanism and just womanhood in our community. We're going to come back to that question that Dr. Tease just raised, of the fact that this is the second time that our nation has elected not only a man over a woman, but in particular has elected President Trump over a female candidate, and what that means and what it says about where we're at. So please just, if you want to take a moment to just say hello and introduce yourself and that beautiful baby, and then you can take that question as well.
Khara. So I need the question again, but hello family in the studio. I'm so happy that we get to gather one more time, and hello to our family who is joining in. I am Dr. Treya Allen. I am currently at the University of Arizona as a DEI-focused instructional support coordinator for faculty, and that simply means I help teachers become better teachers. I'm also faculty at other institutions, but I'm just glad to be in the room with family, and glad to be having this conversation in a space that, even though it's recorded, that we can be open, well, what we call hot, honest, open, and transparent. I think in terms with, this is where I want to start. There has been an apathy within me that I think I'm recognized. At the time, I was very, very concerned, like, why don't I care enough? Why don't I care enough about what's going on in this election? And I think where it started was when Kamala was juxtaposed, when Vice President Kamala Harris was juxtaposed or positioned to be the Black mother that was going to save the Democratic Party. Immediately, the first thing that happened for me is, oh God, get your mental well-being in order, because Black women are about to be under attack. And the second thing that I had was, well, we're about to go from pet to threat. She's going to be the mother that saves us all. Yay. Oh, it's going to be great. She's going to swoop in, because Biden, at the time, we had some concerns about that. And even though she has consistently demonstrated her competence, she was still attacked. Even her Blackness was attacked. Oh, is she Black now? And so I think from that moment on, part of protecting my mental well-being throughout the duration of this election has been this growing sense of apathy, in that I refuse to allow myself to get so hung up or so invested in the election and all of these things, because I understood that Black womanhood was again going to be under attack, right? So one of the things I'm always I'm always reminded of is regardless of the industry, Black women are always called in to clean up messes, always. And then once the mess is cleaned up and we have demonstrated not just competency, but excellence, then we start attacking the very nature of Black womanhood, right? Why does it have to be Kamala? So there were so many lies that came out over time. And as long as Kamala was vice president behind a Biden administration, we didn't really have to worry about her, right? Because she was the person behind Biden that was making Biden look good. But as soon as she gets out into the limelight, she stands on her own, then we're going to start attacking her. Not just like who she is identity-wise, but also how she carries herself in her profession and how she shows up as her authentic self. So I think, as I was talking to a therapist friend of mine, she said that a lot of people have developed this sense of apathy, and it is a way to protect your mental well-being when you know that times are going to be tumultuous. That apathy allows me to show up and still have critical hope. So here's the difference between having hope and critical hope. Critical hope critically analyzes the systems that we are in. It is not this toxic positivity that says, oh, we gonna be all right, blah, 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 blah. No, it actually critiques the systems that we are in. It actually can demarcate and trace back what we are sitting in now. Y'all, nobody in Black America is shocked because of these results. When your country is inherently racist, that it was built on the premises of imperialism, colonialism, patriarchy, and racism on top of it, it's not too much longer for them from there until sexism shows up. So from our very foundations of the world, this new country, this turtle island that we are standing on, we understand that the whole premise of America is a business, and a business that is ran by Black bodies, right? So y'all hear me say this all the time. I refuse to be fearful in a country that my ancestors built. I refuse to walk around here as if the world is going to end, right? So that's just the Black side. Now, if I add my faith side in there, the word of God tells us, think it not strange when you fall into various and diverse trials, because in the end, y'all, we still win. So this thing is only coming to shape who I am. It's only coming to challenge and to bring out the better parts of me. So I can honestly tell you that, yes, while I am critiquing this system, I am also showing up to teach classes because they need to see a Dr. Allen. They need to see a Dr. Allen that takes psychology and rewrites psychology so that my Black and brown students know that, no, we were not just the experiment, but a lot of the things that we're putting into play now, this idea of self-care, that comes from Audre Lorde. That is not a capitalistic, colonistic term or even a situation that was like brought to us. No, this idea of radical self-care, this idea of faith that moves mountains was here well before there was a Trump, well before there was a Vice President Kamala Harris, and well before any of the things that we're feeling. So even though I'm in a sense of apathy, like, I'm not surprised. Similar to like the January 6th resurrection, I went to work. And I was just like, oh, that's what they gonna do. I felt the same way about this election. Could we have done amazing things? Yes. But I also know that God is still on the throne and he doesn't make mistakes. And it is him who directs the heads of kings. And so with that in mind, I feel all right. I'm a little bit weary, but my soul is not tired. So off to work we go. That's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allen. I think that was exactly what I can see from others applauding, others on this call, and particularly, I think, in our audience, very much needed to hear right now. because we are coming to the end of our time, I'd like to just once again go around the table, and we'll start with Dr. Curtis, who I see at the top of the table right now, and we'll end with Dr. Allen. But just hear what your message would be for our community, for the nation, just where we go from here and how we should carry ourselves forward. Dr. Curtis, it looks like you're still muted. There we go.
I thought I could just push the mic on that. But anyway, I want to say this because I'm going to look at it from racially. We need to be more racially well. Because and we need to know how to navigate race when, especially whites, because that's where the power is in both parties. We need to be able to speak up when they're out of line in advocating for us. We don't need a savior. So I really think one of the things that first hurt Kamala Harris was that Biden said he was going to choose a Black woman. Okay, Biden, if you're going to choose that and you know you're going to do that because of race relations here, don't say it. Because when you say it, she becomes a DEI hire. And now she's already back a few steps. So we have to speak up and say, hey, we as African Americans need to say, you need to get the best person for the job. We're not going to let you say that. Now, she was the best person, but don't connect my race to it. And we have to be able to talk to them about how they talk about us. We're not a prop. And so she didn't stand a chance, and time was not on her side. She started late in the game, so time was not on her side. So even knowing all the history from slavery to freedom and even beyond slavery, all of that, this game is about race in today, what this election was about. This election was about people of color harming you. This election was about, even if they're well-educated people of color, they're going to be DEI hires. So we've got to find a way to navigate that. We have several subcultures within our culture. How do we speak to the Afrocentric individual? How do we speak to the acculturated individual? How do we speak to the bicultural individual? How do we speak to the deviant individual? How do we speak to conformists in our community? How do we speak to them? How do we get to motivate them to get to the polls? Because I know a whole lot of Black folks that didn't vote. They say, oh, we didn't have the right candidates on either side. Well, that was a vote for Trump. How do we get our folks to understand who they are and how to engage with us, and then how to tell our story? Because if we don't, we're going to have those who believe that slavery, on the other side, who believe that slavery, Democrat or Republican, Independent, we're going to believe that slavery happened a long time ago, get over it. Or they're going to say, I'll speak for you, Dr. Curtis. Don't worry, I'll give your opinion in the room since they didn't invite you. Or I'm more like Shirley Chisholm. I'll bring my folding chair. I'll speak for myself. And then the third piece is, how do we get them to understand that our problems are your problems? My problem is the problem of white people. My problem is the problem of Hispanic people. My problem is the problem of all the subcultures of all of these races. And then we have to have, because I do have that hope, but I want to navigate this monster in the room that we don't call it we feel like we don't have to call it on the carpet in the Democratic Party. It's live and well there as well. It looks different. It's subtle. So we have to do that. Let me speak for myself. Don't go out there, white man, and say you're gonna put a Black woman in this position. You put us back. You set us back. So now I'm gonna be that angry Black woman. I know I am, because I had to have this white man speak up for me. No, I'm not that, but you've already told them that was me. So I think we as African Americans, you talk about as our community, let's understand each other. Let's understand these subcultures. And then let's talk about how we move forward and be able to speak to any side about how you're not going to use us for your political gain. And that's what we have to do. That would be my message. Don't tell me I'm too black over here and I'm too white over here. I'm not black enough over here and I'm too black over here. Don't tell me that. You get to know who Dr. Curtis is. You don't get to decide how black I am. You're not going to take me into this institutional racism, that I will have for myself, that I'll feel less than. I'm not going to play that game with you. I'm going to call you on that. Whoever you are, whatever race you're from, I'm going to call you on that, because you're not going to put me out there after you've said that. I did after, I think it was Michael Brown, after he died, or either George Floyd. Well, I did a diversity workshop for a police department. And I walked in there with those guys, and you think that they wanted to hear from me? And their assistant chief, their deputy chief came in and told them, we're having this training. You're going to listen to her. Now, I'm a black woman coming in here, and the majority of the police officers are white. You're going to listen to her. You're going to respect this woman, and you're going to take in what she's having to say. And then he left. Then I told him, I said, I told the group, let's back this up. Let's back this up. That is not why I'm here. I'm here to listen to you and your concerns. I am not here to be some little token or some little thing that you can say, okay, we took care of that issue with training. I am here to talk to you about why you took this job, and how do you connect your mission to your actions on the street. That's what we're here for. That's exactly what we're here for. And then we've got to start calling people out who thinks that they're speaking for us. He is not speaking for me. I'm here for a different perspective than what he thinks I'm here for. And then I immediately got the respect of that group after I said that. And one officer told me, had you not said that, I would have tuned out today. Because I was already, my color had already spoken for me before I even opened my mouth. The color of my skin had already spoken. And I knew that it was my responsibility to seek first to understand and then be understood. And that's what faith is. That's a call to a higher level, and confidence to speak it and call it out when you see it. I'm going to stop right there just because of time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Curtis. Reverend Kennedy.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Curtis, you touched on so many things that I think really resonate with us. You know, it's that idea of identity and someone else choosing who we are for us. I certainly recall those times of being too black while not being black enough at the same time, and rejecting that idea and that statement. I'm both. Okay. And I get to decide what my narrative is going to be and how I'm going to present it and who I'm going to be while I present it. And so I appreciate that. And I think that we have to stand on that. But I don't want to take long on here, because I think one of the things that's very important is that we just have the courage and the confidence to call out what's wrong when we see it, regardless of where it exists. Okay. So if someone says something that we know is completely out of line, we need to challenge that, and we need to hold people accountable. And so I want to use this example. Overnight, one of the most stated comments among junior high school kids in the last 24 to 48 hours is this statement, "Your body, my choice." Okay. This misogyny that has come out of this election. And so as I was closing out on the air today, I challenged every single father, every brother, every person out there, regardless of whether you're black or white. I don't care who you are. Okay. If you hear your kid say something like that, You have got to call it out. This isn't red or blue to me. This isn't Republican or Democrat. This is, you cannot allow that to become the message. Young men, boys, or whatever are now promoting this because of the loss of election and this perception now that not only do we have our privilege back, you can't do anything about it. Okay. It's your body, but it's my choice. That is dangerous. Okay. It's sinister. It's diabolical. It's the thing. And so, are we going to get in the face of anyone? If that's your kid, I don't care what color you are. I'm going to say something. And though I may say something to your kid, I'm going to take it home and I'm going to go, Dad, brother, um, friend, whatever, you don't get to promote that type of thinking, not on my watch. I don't care who you are. And so if we just use that and now we take that and we go through the whole landscape and we go, you know what? If you start talking nonsense, if you start speaking against what we know is inclusive and not divisive. You know what's going to happen over the next 4 years, folks? The whole idea, and I know there's a lot of people on this panel that work in the DEI space, and so do I. You know, we're going to have to call it something else. Okay, it's going to still be the same thing, but it's going to be rebranded as something else because that term has become so offensive and it has become so corrupted. People don't even know what it means anymore. Someone asked me recently, what's the difference between DEI and affirmative action? I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, first off, before I can even talk affirmative action with you, I need to ask you if you're willing to have the discussion as to why we ever needed it in the first place. Because if you're not willing to have that discussion with me, I don't even know that we can get any traction in any other discussion about it. Okay, so now we fall into this place to where we're going to have to, those of us who operate in diversity and equity and inclusivity, we're not going to be able to call it that anymore. We're going to have to rebrand it so that it becomes acceptable terms again. And so what we have to also do is we have to push back and we have to say, wait a second, this ideology, this idea that because you're this, you are more intelligent. You spoke to Kamala's intelligence being challenged. Someone also said to me this week, we were talking about the race and they said, you think she's smart? I was like, yeah, I think she's brilliant. You don't? I mean, where do you come from? Please tell me more about how you got in that space. And as they tried to articulate their flawed thinking, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so I was able to challenge them. It's like, all right, well, can we peel back some layers here? What is it about her that makes you think she's not smart? What makes you think he is? And of course, then we began to uncover the blanket of racism. And as we turned out, it wasn't so subtle after all. It was very obvious. But we had to have that dialogue. So what I'm saying is we have an opportunity to have these conversations. Where we go from here, I don't know. But when we know it's wrong, we need to say it's wrong. When it doesn't align with our biblical values, let's call it that. And the last I checked, the Bible is written in black and white, but it's not about black and white. It's about something much higher and much greater than that. And so let's do our job. Let's do our job.
Amen. Dr. Guthrie.
All right. So I'll try to be brief, not trying to repeat what's already been said. But I'll just give kudos to Kamala Harris for what she did in 100 days. And because she showed Black women's excellence. And that was an incredible choice that she had to make, as you said, Mary, without losing her mind, or Dr. Allen, Treya, without losing her mind, because she was called upon to do an impossible chore. And she was not just sitting back in the kitchen waiting for someone to tap her on the shoulder and said, "Did you bring out those cookies?" She was not. She was like, "I'm bringing it. Okay, I'm going to prosecute this man." And so I give her kudos for that. But it was an impossible chore because, one, she's not a politician. She's a prosecutor and a lawyer. And she had one term as a senator, which did not give her a chance to get 30 years of networking and political intrigue and all the stuff that Biden said. That's why I'm the leader. She couldn't stand up to him and say, you're right. She couldn't. But she went ahead and did what she could do in 100 days. But Inside Baseball says the Democratic Party was supposed to elect a leader. They wouldn't let her be the leader. And Biden was not up to the choice. So who is it? Cory Booker? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? Nobody knows who the hell it is. Nobody's running the Democratic Party. Even in Massachusetts, Arizona, when I looked at the Democrats there, I'm like, come on, guys. You aren't even really. I was the youngest person in the room, and I was like 65. Like, come on now. Nobody's going to come and vote for all the people that we want because you're not reaching out to them. And of course, Adrian Fonce was running at the time, and he did some dastardly thing to denigrate black voters and said basically he's going to win the Hispanics because he could speak Spanish, and he could remove the Trump voters out of Hispanics to vote for Democrats. I'm like, this is not going to work. You're going to sell our souls to people that you think should be voting for us because they're Hispanic or Asian or Latino, while selling black folks out. And I feel nationally that's what the Democratic Party did. So Inside Baseball says you got to be like LBJ was, where you twist arms, you kneecap people, you break heads, and make them do what they're supposed to do. And if that means you're going to lose the South forever, then yeah, that means you lose the South forever. And LBJ said straight up, that's what it's about. But he used every ounce of his political strength to do that. And I think that there's been nobody since, not Obama. Well, Hillary came close. Hillary wanted to take over the Democratic Party, right? But the Democrats didn't want a white woman like Hillary taking over because of Bill. So, but I give her kudos because she says the Democratic Party is mine and I'm going to run for office and you're going to elect me. And people were like, the arrogance of this white, you know what? You know, that should have told us, right, back in 2016, that if any woman, you know, black, white, green, or yellow, step up to the plate and they weren't going to respect her because they didn't respect Hillary, well, you know, game over. And so I really like the fact, bringing it home, that Dr. Mary said, you know, it's local, it's global, it's international, it's spiritual as well as physical. And what the hell are we talking about that we're going to fix it by electing Kamala to put her finger in the dike? What the hell are we talking about? You know, that is not revolutionary. And so I have to stand back and say, I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the one who told my 20-year-old, my 23-year-old, you have to vote. And they said, why? Because a vote is for the status quo, doctor. You know that, right? And I said, yeah, Maya, Aoife, a vote is for the status quo. It says, well, you're voting for a system that already is going to destroy us, that has 40,000 people dead in Gaza, that has and I said, this is my 20-year-old. I said, I can't argue with you, but I want you to vote because why? When I was 10 years old, there was a person who was murdered, Martin Luther King, and 2 months later, RFK was murdered. And then 6 months later, Nixon was elected. And I could go down the line of all the people who have died to try to keep our votes and our places in line in the status quo. But I won't do that for you because I'm using my professorial voice again. And I just simply have to say, as a gatekeeper, yes, my 20-year-old, my 23-year-old, you have to come up and become the status quo so that that becomes normal, that Black women and Latino women and Asian women are the leaders of the world. And if people are afraid of that, as Dr. Kennedy has said, if people are afraid of that, it's because they don't have the faith to support them. And the problem is, and it's my closing remark, is we let racism take the whole around our lives and fill it with a bunch of lies that then people gravitate towards because we're afraid to confront it and say that you can't talk about immigrants eating dogs. You can't talk about fellatio on, you know, you can't do these things as normal behavior. And that if we don't challenge it, right, then that becomes normalized. And I think anything goes. And so in closing, we can't wait for the next generation. The generation is already here. We have to do the local work. And if that means that we're the gatekeeper, holding it open for a little while for the next Kamala or Hillary or Obama, then we do that, knowing that people will learn that it's bigger than just one person, one party, or being red or blue. I really love what Dr. Kennedy was saying. What gives us the audacity to think that we're right and the other person is always wrong? Because that's how we've been treated. And so when victimhood becomes the way we treat other people, then we don't always give a fair shake. Even within our own families, as Martin was know, we got some people in our own family that we will have knockdown, drag out fights with, but because we love them, we find a way to get back to healing. And so I like this panel because it is about the healing. And as Dr. Curtis and Dr. Hart said, let's keep this together going forward in some way, shape, or fashion. We'll meet in Barbados. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guthrie. Dr. Tease.
I'm so happy that I didn't go after Pastor Kennedy because I was like, you're going to have to say a prayer for me. But you were saying some really good things. But I'll say this as someone who also works in DEI. If someone was to ask me the difference between affirmative action and DEI, I would say they both have benefited white folks. And so in lots of ways. And so they are for the benefit and to the betterment of white folks in many ways that have not been for the people of color that normally get bastardized by those terms or those things. For me, the closing thing becomes back to, and I guess if I'm labeling my responses, what's we gonna do? It really is, how do we take what everyone is saying here? How do we take that joy and continue to be, ourselves? I don't, believe that in talking about the truth and really dealing with the truth and the fear that we are always having to face and encounter because there are those who are using their power to basically tell lies and to manage and manipulate. And it's really interesting, and I'll just use that in quotes, interesting to see how so many people continue to vote against their own interests. It's so interesting to see how, again, looking at those numbers, whether they were Hispanic, whether they were Asian, whether they were Native American, gay, female, all, those numbers basically say there's a large contingent of folks who bought into whatever the Kool-Aid was that Trump and all those with him that were selling. And I don't know how to ask that question or why. I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation at some point, but I don't know how to ask that question why, then to have that dialogue that you were talking about, Pastor Kennedy, or even how I love how Dr. Allen said, I did come to work. I did show up. I did try to do those things, but it was hard. But how do we continue to do that? And I think we come from a people that we make a way out of no way. We sing, we struggle, and we harmonize until better days come. And I'm wondering, how do we re-sing that song? How do we bring that freedom? And looking at, Dr. Guthrie talking about your beautiful girls, voting, right? There is a system that we have. There is a system that we have to look at changing, but it will not change and it will not move if everybody does not play their part. There was somewhere around 20 million folks who didn't vote. I think more so. I don't know which way that would have swung the election. I don't know, what they would want to do, but I think we have to get back to, it's essential and important that you use your voice because that becomes a great equalizer. Now that I believe, even though I think we now need to look at doing away with the Electoral College, I think we now need to look at a whole bunch of stuff. But I do think that as we're moving forward, as we're looking and strategizing and thinking about how do we, one, if we're talking Black folks, the Black community, leverage our vote, Because if we're still giving 90-something% of our vote to a Democrat party, I think we need to think about the whys and what are we getting out of that vote? Because we did the job and that was the assignment. We showed up. Everybody else didn't. And so how do we now talk to those folks about the ways in which we're leveraging and exampling our power and what we're asking for? So I do think, coming back into those questions of, people thought Kamala was dumb, which is interesting, but that's racism. That's misogyny. Those are all those isms that I do think we push back on, but I think it's no longer. And I'm wondering how much longer that's our job. In the work that we do when we talk about DEI and inclusivity, my sisters and I always talk about advocates and accomplices. Allies are now to the side. We got enough allies, got enough people trying to get awareness. We now need advocates and we need allies who, if they're going to speak for us, as you said, Dr. Curtis, they speak right. Not just, I almost said something else. They speak right. And while I think you're doing that, you understand the myriad complexities that comes not only with Blackness, but then with orientation, then with religiosity, with all those different things. So if you're going to speak, you come correct. And I think that one of the biggest things that I've been joking with my family, like I'm looking for Wakanda. Now I grew up reading comic books all my life, watched the movie. So, Wakanda is somewhere, I believe that wholeheartedly. But, if that's the case and we're looking for Wakanda or we're trying to build Wakanda, then what are the blocks that are going to be that foundation? And do we already have it or do we need to rebuild it? Who do we think about? Who needs to be there? And how do we continue to build on the ongoing conversations that we're having here now? I'm appreciative again of being here with all of you. Want to have the conversation to keep going. You make me feel a little bit better. I can't say what's going to happen once this goes off. And then as we move forward, and then not to mention, I think I just got upset at thinking again, inauguration is on King Day. Now, I was named after Martin Luther King, so my birthday is January the 15th. King Day is, so I don't know, but I say we black out. I think that's the whole thing is we do a blackout. But really and truthfully, closing comments on all this is that I think if we're going to speak truth, if we're going to shame the devil, I do think that then requires all of us to then really look inward to have those conversations, rebuild our community, and think about how we now move forward in that strategy of party selection, giving votes, showing power, and then doing the due diligence. And I guess the surprising thing, and I'll say this, that I'm thinking of, the only thing that I will give Byron Donaldson credit for, and I do say that with quotes, when he said that there was a time that the Black family was stronger when he was talking about pre-civil rights, I think that's something that we have to start thinking about as how do we get back to, if we're looking inward at Black folks, how do we get back to where the community was for the community? We had the Tulsa, before others came and destroyed it. How do we start building those power? How do we start getting those communities together and then moving forward and leveraging that power for the betterment of us, which essentially then becomes a betterment for others as well.
Thank you. School board member Kidd.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, so Dr. Tease, how are we going to do it? Well, I came from a culture, and Dr. Hart could probably chime in there, where the village raised the child. So I'm getting into the school board. So we're going to start with them kids. We're going to start with them kids. We're going to look at the curriculum. We're going to teach civics once again, right? In every office that we hold, we're going to teach. We're going to teach the truth, because truth will always make you free, right? there's a saying that the lie goes around the world 10 times before the truth is tying the shoelace, right? So we know that someday the truth will come out. So let's stand firm. Let us not change who we are, and let us teach. Let us educate. Let us make sure whatever we know, it's not for us, it is to share. Let us share our stories. As gruesome as it may sound, because truth could be gruesome sometimes, because if we start to talk about slavery, nobody wants to hear about it. Well, we need to talk about this. We need to know where we come from. We need to know where we are today in order for us to move forward. So if we only accept lies and speak lies and believe lies, look at what our future will look at. It will look. So we have to start, be truthful to ourselves, because there's a lot of lies going around. Let us not blame. Let us teach. Let us educate. Let us be adamant. Let us lead. And most important, let us pray, because faith eats fear for breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hart. Nope, you're still muted. There we go.
Okay. So I like that, Miss Kidd, my Trinidad Caribbean sister. So if the majority of us knew the root of the evil, then the road to its cure would not be long. And I'm really happy in some ways to hear what you've all stated. And maybe it's my Caribbean roots, Barbados, but I have a different perspective. So I want to share this with you really quickly. I'm not going to be long because I know it's late and I respect the time. It's Friday night as well. So the day before the election, I invited my family over for dinner. I have a very small family. I fed the soul with soul food. I had the whole, hook up, fried chicken, macaroni, and the greens. And we sat down and we ate. And at the table, after we ate, we went into the living room, the big screen TV, to watch the numbers come in for this big election. Because Michelle Obama said, hope has a comeback. And so we were all hopeful. I'm the champion of keeping the family energized. I believe in faith the size of a mustard seed. And when I turned on MSNBC election night, and I looked at the table, and my favorite person was seated at the table, and that was Joy Reid. Joy Reid is also a Haitian sister, and the look on her face told me what the end of that story was going to be. If anybody watched Joy Reid that night, I said, oh my Lord, this is horrible. I don't see this coming to any positive end at all. It was the look in the face of Joy Reid. Black women know what's going to happen at the end of the day. So moving forward, we sat there. It was bleak as the day unwound. We end up at 11 o'clock. Everybody realized that, hey, this is not going to end like we think it should. I was like, oh, the numbers will come in late. It's going to switch. 4 years ago, Pennsylvania took 3 days to count. Arizona, all this stuff. The swing states are still out, blah, blah, blah. We all know the outcome the next day. So far, what I've heard is you all have been the woman king and the warrior man, and you are just going to trudge through this thing with heart and power and courage. Well, I did not do that the next day. Okay? I was mystified and mortified, and my soul was shaken. I am human, and I do have blood running through my veins. I had to end up facilitating a professional development workshop the very next day. It was very difficult for me. I trounced through that day. Following that evening, I invited my family back to dinner so we could decompress. I said all that to say, in brevity, I think one of the main things that I would like seeing done in this community, and I'm glad to see the faith leaders on board, of this gallery and the educators. I'm serious. I'm going to tell you something, my brothers and sisters. We need to educate on how to navigate our way through the communities moving forward with our young people. I don't know about you, but white folks been acting crazy in the last 2 days. I've been going to the supermarket and everything's been, peaches and cream before the election. And now carts are banging into my cart. I was in my car. A guy on a bicycle was white, looked at me like, I'm going to have the slave catchers come in and round you up if you look like you're going to hit me. I already feel it. I think that resource centers and faith-based organizations and community leaders, moms in the village, they make a village. Make that terminology make sense. We need to educate our young people. Be careful when you're driving, how to navigate yourself, the look, the whole 9 yards. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to go back and keeping it real. We talk about police brutality. The police are going to extremely be paramilitary right now. And so I know we talk, oh, I'm good. I can handle this. I'm still the same Black woman. H to the N. This stuff is getting ready to get freaky deaky, and it's not going to be good. I'm concerned every time my daughter and my son's 38, my daughter's 34, when they leave the house. My son called me last night. He had to go by the ATM at 10 o'clock, and I stayed on the phone with him until 10. I think we should educate, and I think this is the time that we should use this as an opportunity to leverage a ground game for how to move forward, to keep yourself safe, for how to be to start developing and vetting people who could be leaders. Because I'm a baby boomer too. We need to get our young people on board, but we not need to go back to when those Black kids sat at the lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. We better take this stuff serious, because the convict is not out the gate yet. Okay, he's sitting there rounding up the troops and creating some really crazy, dangerous stuff. And I don't know about you, but I think that I know what's coming down the road. I am frightened and afraid. I live in Arizona, and I have friends that I went to school with. I'm an HBCU grad from Cheney University, and my Philadelphia brothers are telling me they are afraid. These are grown men that have swag and drip, and they're talking about they are afraid. And I think we need to take it seriously. If we have to go, remember back in the day when something was going on, your grandmom and everybody said, we're going to church. And that church was about what we need to do to prepare ourselves, because we got some crazy white folks out here, some damn home rednecks. Okay. Did you see the texts that are coming across the country talking about we need to be ready at 10 o'clock to get in a brown van so we can go pick some cotton? This is going to magnify. We need to get jiggy on this. All these educated men, you all have fabulous things to say. I feel like I've been to church and back, and the rest of you academics, you higher education sisters, I love you. I've been on the Zoom with you before. I feel like I can get 3 credits tonight. So if we combine that faith and that curriculum together, we need to take a block of students, young people, I don't care if they 10, 11, 12, 30, 14, we got to teach them how to navigate through these next 4 years and be safe. The streets are going to be dangerous. Now, anybody that lives in Arizona, real quick, I don't know who's on this gallery lives in Phoenix. I live in Phoenix, but there are certain parts of Phoenix, Arizona, in the Maricopa County area, I'm not driving to anymore at dark. For instance, Gilbert, okay, Mesa, okay. I'm staying in the Maricopa County area. I've developed a report. I've been on the police board here for over 15 years. I know the police chief. I know commanders and assistants. My daughter got a Hart car hit in Mesa, and the white woman cussed her out and flipped her off. And my daughter was called to police in Mesa, was waiting on the police. And I said, Brittany, come back to Phoenix. I can't help you in Mesa. I don't know anybody on the police force there. So my message for anybody that's listening to this yard stream gallery, teach your people that you care about, your grandmama, your auntie, and your loved ones, how to navigate yourself in the streets right now. Because it's calm right now. This is the calm before the storm. And I want to end by a brief quote by my boy, Hakeem Jeffries. He said, been there, done that, not going back. You better say, we haven't been there. We haven't done that. And if we don't get it right, we are going back. Amen. Goodbye. Hello.
Amen and amen. Dr. Roaf.
All right. As a woman who grew up on the Arkansas side of the Mississippi Delta, I concur to everything. I am in California. Shout out to Gavin Newsom, but I feel this is the calm, not before the storm, but before all hell is unleashed. We got to be real and we got to prepare. Now, what I'm saying is a lot of us, we've been doing this work for years already. Build on the foundations you have already established within your family, within your extended family, within your community groups. We are literally creating as I speak, and there's just all kind of abundance coming in because we are doing the deeper work. This is spiritual warfare. This is about the annihilation, the self-annihilation of the two-leggeds, which are very new to this planet. This planet don't need us. Mother Earth probably going to kick us off before anything else really jumps off. But in the meantime, yes, I'm going to be speaking with family, making contingency plans, saving money, get your documents in order. I'm ordering a couple more copies of my birth certificate, and I will also have Xerox copies because it's going to be the slave passcode, show your papers, SB 1070 to the nth degree. I have extended family and community in Mexico. There's a number of places that I can skip down to if necessary. So renew your passport, get your real ID. I'm figuring out, well, first, I'm not going to invest anytime soon in the damn stock market, going old school depression era. How do we save our money? Really going back to the local, really going back to the community, which I've never stopped doing that. So I would say make really, really practical preparation, take that action, sit down with your family. Like I shared with the student yesterday, identify what are your needs, how you are getting those needs met, where there are any gaps, and figure out how to do that and what that's going to look like moving forward. Order in bulk, because when the tariffs go into effect, the bottom, baby, Olympus has fallen. You shall know it by the fruit of its tree, by the fruit that it bears. We have known that this has been, I've known, just like you couldn't reform slavery, you had to abolish it. This whole thing has to go down. It's rotten. It's rotten to the core. We know this. So these are dark days ahead. It is going to be very violent. Now I have military training. So those of you in Arizona, I grew up in Arkansas. It's a hunting state. Everybody got guns. I know how to handle guns. I don't want to go there yet. I've taken more than a year of martial arts. I am looking again to my community to go to self-defense classes in the Oakland area. I do have a stainless steel baseball bat. Self-accountability means to defend ourselves. And if someone comes up to me, I will pop their head open like a watermelon. Take me out if you want to, so that I actually can become a full-blown ancestors on the other side, and then really see how this spiritual warfare amps up. This is do or die. This is right. I will continue to live on my feet. And if I transition, then I will soar on my wings. But yes, make practical preparation, because these MFs are coming, but it's not going to go down the way they think it's going to go down. And take care of yourselves. Pause. Feel all of the feelings. And guess what, Black women? We have burned the capes. No more. We cannot save anybody. That's what this is about. People really tapping into, we cannot save anyone. We cannot bestow or take away power from anyone. And everybody, every single living soul on this whole planet is going to really have this real hard. We are going into a dark night of the collective soul. We are going into the womb, but on the other side of that is the tomb. And I'm good. Spirit don't die. It don't die. We don't, right? I'm telling you, I want it to be quick. I mean, I'm keeping it real. It's coming. We're going into that womb. that tomb. And we get to decide if that is going to be our final resting place, or if we will come out of the end of that womb, that tomb that then becomes the womb. But like, make those practical preparations. And Black women, we have officially burned the whole cape. No more. We are permanently off duty. It is time for people to step up and to pull up their big adult draws and to choose whether or not they're going to actually save themselves. So for Black women, we are no longer, I have been treated until I chose otherwise. Very recently, I was treated like the scapegoat and the mammy and the workhorse all combined. And I said, no more. And it's been amazing, and it will continue to be amazing. We are officially off the clock. That doesn't mean we don't show up in solidarity with like-minded, like-spirited people. That doesn't mean that, I'm creating a community space that is literally a spiritual and a social and an emotional and a material underground railroad. And I got the divine downloads of this is needed. This is needed, and we need to create the spaces for those people who then do go through a transformation if they survive the hell. Because, oh yeah, hell is coming. Dark night of the soul is coming. The tomb of the human species is coming. And guess what? Maybe we won't make it as a species, and that's okay too. And that's really okay, because we don't deserve to if we don't get it together.
And Dr. Allen.
So the first thing I want us all to do is to rest, because revelation comes when we are resting, when we have laid aside every weight that so easily besets us, and we just rest, right? So if you are if you're like, I need it Bible, the Bible tells us to take heed unto thine own self, right? So we have labored, we have toiled. It has been a tumultuous 100 days for a lot of folks, but I need us to rest, right? Feel all the feelings, everything else, but rest is essential. The next thing is that I just want to remind us with what one of our ancestors, Toni Morrison, you all know, I'm always going to quote Black women while I'm on LBE. Toni Morrison says, she tells her students, when you get these jobs that you have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job, I don't know what you're doing back there, but y'all stop. Your real job is that if you are free to free somebody else, if you have power to empower someone else, then this is not a grab, just a candy grab game. The idea behind that is this. Everybody, regardless of what area you work in, whether it is a political capacity or you are waking up every morning just to teach sixth graders, it is our job to work in our part of the vineyard, period. That means that even though I am tired, annoyed, it didn't go the way that I desired for it to be, it is still my responsibility to get up and go teach Psychology 101. It is still my job to get up and go and help teachers and explain to them why their courses should be diverse, why they aren't the full representation of everything that has to do with their content area. And by doing that, what I do is I enlarge my territory and the capacity that I have in order to continue to grow. Y'all, critical hope is not simply just going, I hope it works out. It is understanding that sometimes it doesn't work out. It is understanding that blessing is not just favor. Hold on. Blessing is actually, I have to be the peacemaker. And because I'm the peacemaker, God increases my capacity to bring more peace. Because I have mercy on people and I operate in that when it's hard, when it doesn't look the way it should, God increases my capacity to be to provide mercy to other people. Blessing is not simply just, ooh, I'm raining down, it's money. It's not just that. It's also showing up to our part of the vineyard every day. But before we do all that, we must rest. And so I'm going to leave you with the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, and tell everyone, as I always do, go research the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Fannie Lou Hamer sits in front of, she goes to testify in front of Congress, and she basically just gives her testimony of what life is like for her. But she keys in on this quote, and she says, "Is this America? The land of the free, the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives be threatened daily? Because we want to live as decent human beings in America?" And it is through this testimony that she starts to impact change. Y'all, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party is not just about a collection of folks who come together because they want to rah-rah against the machine. They came with strategy. And that strategy extends beyond race, because even though most Black people stood 10 toes down and we voted Kamala, what we found out is it's not enough just for it to be us, which means we are going to have to reach across the aisle. We are going to have to work. We are going to have to hear and listen to other people's experiences, because people vote for what they are passionate about, right? And whether that is I fear a Black woman running the country, or with some Black men, some younger Black men who are like, I have issues with the economy that the Democratic Party did not necessarily address. Everyone has a reason for the reason that they voted for whomever, whether I agree with their vote or not. It is that's their right to be able to do that. But what I do understand is what Chairman Fred said: the same poor books they give your kids, they're giving to ours. The same food that you don't have, or excuse me, the same food, the groceries that you can't buy because grocery prices are high, we're experiencing that too. So rest, get up and work in your area of the vineyard, and then let's collaborate. We don't have to do that tonight. We can feel our feelings. But y'all, I am not going to go to bed afraid in a country that my people built. Point blank, period.
Amen and amen. Thank you, Dr. Allen. Thank you all for joining us this evening and for giving us your time, your emotions, your thoughts, your prayers, your hope, your faith, and all that you brought to this table. As someone raised the words of Shirley Chisholm earlier in this conversation, and that quote of, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I have recently been able to speak before a number of groups and just share that over the past couple of years, probably since 2016, but into now, I have leaned on that phrase a lot, and also adapted it a little bit to say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, be the table. And I think each of you in this space has been the table around which our community can gather, around which we can all feel fed and get the sustenance that we need to make it through the next 4 years, the next 10 years, the next however many more years we have. And I am grateful to each of you for being that space and bringing that to this space for us all to share. We want to thank our audience for joining us this evening, for those who watch live, and for any who will tune in and watch this in the days to come. Put it on repeat, because especially these last words that have been shared out from everyone are words that we are going to need to carry us forward and to keep us moving in the right directions, even when everything else around us is not. So we want to remind folks that have been with us as the Live Black Experience project and with these dialogues that we are here for the long term. We will be coming back and bringing more of these messages into 2025. And we certainly want to keep doing the work that Dr. Hart encouraged us to do in that coalition building, in that conversational, getting to know each other and getting to understand each other. I think it was Dr. Tease who said, that in times of hardship, we're the people who sing and we're the people who harmonize. Excuse me. And I think it's just important for us to remember that in order to harmonize, we have to recognize that we are not all singing the same note. We're bringing different voices and different perspectives to the conversation, and they all matter and they're all important. And so we hope that you'll continue to join us to hear this rich tapestry of voices and keep harmonizing right along with us as we sing the songs that will see us through. With that said, we thank you again. And as always, we urge you to go in grace.